I've been working, I've been trying to. Tom?
I haven't heard that he's not.
We can talk about it anytime. But I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to.
Good evening. I'm going to call to order the February 27th, 2018 Selectmen's meeting of the Town of Stowe. First item of business is public input. Is there anyone here from the public who has any input on a matter that is not scheduled for the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will move directly on to Chair's comments. And this is something I've been meaning to say for quite some time now. In my duties as liaison to various boards and committees in the town, it has always struck me, and no more so than recently, that we have many boards and committees in this community that are staffed by volunteers and aided by town employees who are qualified and very hardworking. The town could not operate without all the boards and all the committees staffed by these volunteers bringing forth the town's business. In fact, I would suggest that around this time of year, the most important and newsworthy business of this town is not conducted by the Board of Selectmen, but by the various boards and committees that our town, our municipality, our community relies upon. So we thank you. We know that you're experienced, knowledgeable, and dedicated, and we're grateful for your contributions to the town. Thank you. That's all I want to say tonight. And I thought it's especially appropriate for me to say it now that so many of you are here. Then without further ado, and I don't know if you've noticed, we've pushed minutes and correspondence further on in the meeting agenda so we can directly get to the joint boards meeting that will be led by our town administrator, of course, on the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is an annual event. Glad to see so many smiling faces here from the respective boards. As you know, this is a requirement of the charter, which created a bylaw. It's probably 10 years ago now, which established as a part of the budget development process, having this joint boards meeting. It's intended to give a high-level overview of process particularly, and to bring to the public meeting our regional school districts, which by percentage and amount are the two biggest departments that we have. And they really hadn't been engaged in our process formally, so they are now through this and our cooperative work that takes place, especially through my office, during the budget development process. So it identifies in the bylaw which departments are to be invited, and I think there's representatives from all of them here this evening. I get to go first. I'll keep it brief, because I've already, at our last meeting, provided to the Board of Selectmen the preliminary budget that I had laid out. And this just continues the process until I'm required under the governance agreement to provide a balanced budget at our second meeting in March. So I won't go over all of the things that I mentioned at the last meeting, but there's been some adjustments since then. Every day I make adjustments, discussions, back and forth with departments, committees, particularly the Capital Planning Committee, on thoughts. So I'll just tell you at this moment what spot I'm on with regard to the budget, and then I'll hand it off to the other departments to go through, starting with the assessors. So I would like you to know that at this moment, and I'm going to break it out between the schools and the non-school municipal, because the numbers are significant, and you'll be able to identify those. So at this moment, the non-school municipal budget I have, with the adjustments I've made to date, coming in at less than 2% increase over the current year. I'm hopeful, in working with the capital planning committee and some thoughts that we're going over, and I think some agreeable departments, that's gonna come down some. I'm optimistic that our budget can come in at something significantly lower than where it is now. And I'm hopeful that we can get a level funded budget, basically a push on this year. That would be significant. And relying on an estimate that the assessor's office gave me, you know, I just worked some numbers to get you an idea of how it affects the tax rate, which is the important thing. Where we are now and where we progress to, in any event, is going to result, based on the preliminary estimate of the total valuation of the town next year, which will be $1,325,000 plus or minus. Our current rate is $20.98. I'm currently less than $20.50. And if we get to the spot that I'm hopeful to get to, and that leaves aside any help from the schools, which I'll get to in a second, that we can get down to a level funded budget and something in the low $20.30 plus or minus. With respect to the schools, right now, we have I have plug
Save the
number.
applause till much later.
I have a plug number for Nashoba Regional School District, and that's all it is. But they're meeting tomorrow night. My understanding is they hope to get a vote on a budget. I mean, it's going to be brought up for discussion. They've got several options that I know the staff and administration's been working on that the school committee hasn't seen yet. But I met with the superintendent yesterday. And I'm optimistic that what will be presented tomorrow night, and which hopefully might pass, will be a number lower than I've got now, which is, at this moment, $18,174,522, which is our assessment. And that represents a 5.74% increase over the current year. The dollar value, which is important too, is $986,148, is an increase over this year. The Minuteman assessment, which I believe has been voted, so it's not a plug number and it's not going to change unless something I'm not aware of occurs, is $727,258, which is a 15.26% increase over the current year. You blend them together, you get just over a 6% increase and over $1 million increase. Right now, where we are on our budget, the estimated increase is $218,000 at the percentage we're at. So I'm hoping to bring that down, again, close to a push. But right now, it's $218,000 non-school municipal, $1 million on the school side. 5 times greater on the school side. Hopefully with a vote tomorrow night from the school district, that comes down. And I've done some what-ifs on scenarios there, but I'm not going to bring them up until the school committee's had the opportunity to look at the numbers that are going to be presented to them and what they are out there. So to me, that's encouraging. A lot of work by a lot of departments. I say that from my personal involvement with them. I've been meeting with them repeatedly for months now, and much of what's reflected in here, though it's not what was requested, it's what they've decided that they would change their budget to lower it. And I'm thankful for that, and I think I told you in my preliminary budget that our public safety particularly, which includes the building department, but fire and police, highway, when you add them together collectively, their budgets are over $3 million. They're coming in at less than 1/2 of 1% increase. And what I've said in the past, and again, it's not a common occurrence. It's been 25 years since highway, police, or fire have increased their headcount. Basically, I'm dealing with the same number of folks that I came here with over 25 years ago. I think it's less than 1/2 of a full-time equivalency which was a part-time admin. In fact, the police are operating with, I think, something less than when I came here 20-something years ago. So say what you want about the cost of those services and the rest, I will just say to you, and it's not because and I've got 2 unions involved there, which adds to a higher level of difficulty in maintaining the same headcount, but it's because of the unions and our negotiations that involve no attorneys, no regional district representatives. It's me at the table, them at the table, and we've been doing that for a long time, and so I appreciate that effort. We've never reached an impasse in negotiations, never been to arbitration. It's a record that, you know, is not matched everywhere, and I'm thankful for them, and I think other people who are been in this business realize that we don't manage by grievance. We're honest with each other, truthful. They give, we give, and it's worked well. So that's where I am on the budget. I'm encouraged and hopeful in the end I come close to what I'm predicting we will, but I'm comfortable in saying I think we'll get close to that. And so in all of this, from my perspective and my effort, is to assist the taxpayers, set a new baseline for me, for us, right? And so that's important, and it's a collaborative effort, and everybody so far has been cooperating, so I'm pleased with that. And having said that, and I'll keep the board and others apprised going forward, because every day something changes, but it's all trending in the right direction, and it's my job and others to make sure it continues in that direction. Now, what I'd like to do is start with the assessors with regard to those that are invited under this bylaw. And again, it's intended not to get into details of the budget, in part because the assessors don't play a role in details of the budget, but they play the part of providing a revenue source to us that's terribly important, and equally as important, what happens with taxes and other things. Then we'll go on to the other ones. So, Don?
Okay. Thanks, Bill. First, let me thank Kristen and her staff for putting together the figures on new growth that we'll be presenting here today. We have estimated preliminarily, anyway, that new revenue from new growth for fiscal year 2019 would be around $400,000. That's up marginally from last year. It's based on a new valuation of approximately $19 million, much of which is represented in the condo development at Regency at Stowe, which is a 66-unit age-restricted townhouse development that's underway, probably about 50%, would you say? Yeah, so almost half of the new growth comes from that revenue source. Others would be, you know, permits and cyclicals. There's a few new homes. Personal property accounts for about $1 million, and then some new lots. Land growth would be approximately $1 million. So the total growth projected valuation would be $19 million, and from that, the estimate is $400,000 in new revenue.
And that's essentially, I've plugged in the $400,000 in new growth. It is a slight increase over what we've had, and even what was showing earlier. And so that's helpful to us. We have structural impediments on the revenue side in that we have an undiversified tax base. And besides being undiversified, as a percentage of our total revenues, our tax base is around 90% or closing on it. And it's trending the wrong way. We have very little industrial or commercial, and it's less than it was when I got here. So with that structural impediment, any resource that we can get on the revenue side comes through new growth for residential taxation. So I'd go to the school districts next, and I know we have Alice DeLuca to represent Minuteman.
Yeah. I will be very brief. I'll just say that anyone who's been over there will see that the steel is being erected. They're expecting to be on the roof in March of the building. They're expecting to open in 2019 in the fall, and it's on time, actually early and on budget currently. That's the biggest news from Minuteman. And the overall budget, operating budget, actually was decreased by 3.7%, but because of the building, the assessment goes up. But things are going well over there. We have a new advanced manufacturing equipment shop that is totally incredible, and it's available for adults also to go and get trained for these very well-paid jobs in CNC manufacturing. So a lot of good things happening in
Great. And Mark Jones, who's a member of the Nashoba Regional School District School Committee, has just arrived.
I'm not actually prepared to give you the numbers right this second. I didn't have to run here to get to the meeting, so if you give me 5 minutes, I'll dig them up.
Okay, then we'll go next to the Capital Planning Committee.
Our chair, Steve Jelinek, can't make it, so I'm on the Capital Planning Committee. I've got some notes from him, and I'll give you the bottom line on that. I think I saw Julia North, who's also on our committee, so maybe she'll have something to add as well. So, as you all know, Stowe departments prepare 5-year capital plans and submit them to the Capital Planning Committee, and the departments are generally very good about sticking to them. The bottom line this year is that we had been expecting $2,082,000 in capital requests. The actual requests that came through were $993,314, and not all of that is attributable, or would be attributable if approved, to the tax rate. I'll talk about that in a second. A couple of notable reductions from the requests that were expected according to the plans. The assessors and the Recreation Department both skipped items that they had put in their 5-year plans. There was about $55,000 in savings there. The Building Department, Highway Department, and the Police requested less than they had expected in their 5-year plans. The savings there was $548,000. Cemetery Department is talking about a new building, but rather than putting the entire cost in their 5-year plan, or in this year of the plan, they're seeking only design funds, and I think that is $50,000. A couple of requests came in higher than expected from the 5-year plan. Stowe TV intends to purchase a video mixer, which wasn't in their plan, but that's only $12,000. The Nashoba School District is requesting a total of $308,000, whereas they had $65,000 in their capital plan for last year. A couple of things to really note. As I mentioned, not all of this, even if it were approved, not all the $993,000 is attributable to the tax rate. Stowe TV's capital funding would come from Comcast and Verizon charges that we all pay, that people who subscribe for those services pay. $205,000 of those requests would be covered by the Community Preservation Act, or at least it has been requested that it be covered by that, not by the tax rate. The Police Department usually asks for a new cruiser every year. It makes sense in the long run. They are skipping it this year. They, as you have all probably noticed, have gone to the new kind of small SUV police interceptor models. They're expecting a little longer life from those, and they're able to skip a year. We haven't met with the planning board yet. The planning board is requesting $50,000 for design and engineering on the Complete Streets program. That should be, we hope, reimbursed by the state. We've asked the school department, Nashoba, for some more information on a couple of items. Notably, I think it's $150,000 on the Hale Auditorium HVAC system. We have met with them once. They had a change in leadership there, and they're still getting us some answers on that, but we'll be taking a look at that. We haven't met with the cemetery department yet, but it is worth noting that the Building Reuse Task Force suggested that they keep their offices in the old fire station. We now have 2 old fire stations, so the newer old fire station, where they currently are. And I think that is about it. The town administrator has shared with us his target numbers for the level funded budget, and we're hopeful that we can get there, or at least very close. Julianne, do you want to add anything?
That's good, thanks.
Mark, are you ready yet, or you want me?
Ready enough, I guess.
Sure.
So the school committee is still in the midst of their budget process. We have 2 more weeks of hard thinking to go. The most recent draft that was presented by the administration was on February 21st. The gross amount of the district at that point was, draft was about $54,700,000, and Stowe's portion of that would be about $18,174,000. That's in the vicinity of 5.1% increase for the gross for the whole district. And I think that draft has Stowe's increase somewhat more than that in terms of assessments. The school committee knows that they have a lot of work to do to bring that number to a more manageable amount, and I've heard secondhand through the administration that there's a intent to try to get that number in the vicinity of 4%, both in gross and also in terms of assessments to the various towns. But I haven't seen those numbers yet, and we'll see them tomorrow at the school committee meeting.
Last but not least, the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee. Thank you very much for having us. I have to applaud the efforts that you have made with all the boards. It's pretty impressive that you're probably approaching your level funded budget. So we had a couple questions, if that's okay. First of all, it's great to hear that you're considering to cut the tax rate, because that was a goal that we had set as a committee at the beginning of the year to reduce or stop the tax rate growth. The first question I have is around OPEB and the new GASB 75 regulations. So our understanding, and we're volunteers, so please educate us if we have something wrong. We now have to start including OPEB as part of the liability on our balance sheet. Is that correct?
We have,
Yes.
when the next audit comes through,
Mm-hmm.
which and I'm not certain when it's upcoming, but until that's done, that's when you begin to formally respond to GASB 75. So once the next audit's done, we'll be obligated to carry that sheet.
That's June of this year.
That's effective.
This fiscal year.
But it's subject to us on a schedule that we have our audits to be complete, which will be done sometime in the upcoming fiscal year. And then formally, with that next upcoming audit, as you can imagine, you don't have to adjust your audit schedule for that variable, but it's effective in this year, and once our accountant has it scheduled, then it will be.
And how big is that number at this point?
A few $1 million, but I don't know what it is exactly right now.
Pretty sure.
Something in the order of $8 million.
Yeah, you might have a more accurate number than I do. Just going off the top of my head. In the event, we'll be fully compliant, and whatever we have to do, we'll do.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, it's just an area that we think that the town needs to focus on. You know, we've been contributing $50,000 a year, and I know that's kind of the ongoing way to deal with it. Most other towns are doing that way, but actually, that's actually not true, apparently. There's a bunch of towns around us that have contributed more than the $50,000 a year that we're contributing. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll just, if I can just jump in.
Yep.
Town of Acton, $630,000, their annual contribution to their OPEB liability.
What's their liability?
That's $630 this year. They're on track to be to zero in 20 years. The town of Harvard contributed $450,000 to their OPEB trust account, which is 9 times our contribution. The town of Bolton did $183,000 this year, last year, and their coming year. The town of Sudbury did $540,000 to their OPEB liability trust account. The point that we worry about is that our credit rating, our municipal bond credit rating, may be, I'm not saying it will be, but may be affected. Because if you're S&P or Moody's and you're looking to rate a town's credit worthiness, those towns that are actually addressing and dealing with their OPEB liability are likely to be more favorably viewed than towns that aren't.
Let's
Mr.
start.
Town Administrator,
I wanna hear-
I don't mean to cut you off.
No, I want to hear his opinion too.
But I know you're running the meeting, but if I could just address this. These are all very good points, and OPEB has come up as long as I've been a volunteer in Stowe, first on the school committee, and now we've been anticipating the new general accounting standard that requires noting this liability. There are various ways to deal with it. I would, though, recommend that this is such an important topic, and you've obviously researched it so well, that it may be a better dealt with in a joint meeting just between the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen, where we can flesh this out a little more.
Okay.
And we can look at those comparisons. If that's all right with you and the town
And
administrator.
in all fairness.
I would just like to comment.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
I'm not nearly as concerned
Right.
as the actuarials are and the ones that come out with, and I would say Sudbury and Acton, I'm gonna guess their liability is much larger than ours, so their contribution probably is, so those aren't good comparisons for me. Now, I'll take Harvard and Bolton, but I will say this to you, just personally and professionally, been doing this a long time. I understand the exposure and that threat, but I will tell you this, that it's a threat that my 25 years of experience tell me to try to respond to what the actuarials under Gatsby are telling you would require cuts in the budget or increases in taxes that by comparison are much more threatening to the livelihood of this community and many others than that Gatsby number and that actuarial. That's my own personal opinion about it. Having said that, I can understand, and if the town wants to appropriate several $100,000 a year, bring it to the town meeting, the rest, but I will just tell you that for me, I'm not saying it's purposely a scare tactic, but I've looked at these for a number of years, and these unfunded liabilities, we're pay-as-you-go, as we are with every department, okay? I look at the trend for us with regard to our retirees and the numbers and tracking it that way. I wouldn't object to putting more money into it. I would only be cautious on the amount of money simply to respond to a number that Gatsby says you should plug as a plug number based on the actual returns. That's just me. So I've been watching it and tracking it, concerned about it, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am some other more immediate needs. And this is almost a zero-sum game. What you put there, you're taking away from somewhere else. And if the value is, say it results in cutting staff and other things, that will be a decision that the town meeting makes. That wouldn't be one that I'd be advocating for at this point. It's not direct, certain, and immediate. It's a longer term. Adjustments can be made over time. And I've seen, unfortunately, what I think is a reaction to try to meet, this plug number that's set by the actuarials now, when to do so requires not necessarily tragic choices, but in some cases it's going to be if they try to. Communities that don't have the wherewithal, though we don't have. I'm using, for example, a large sum of stored assets to balance this budget to help the tax rate. You'd be plugging that into OPEB if that would be my suggestion as the first alternative, or you're getting into the budgets. You're telling the budgets to be cut more to do that, or it's stored assets, or raising taxes. And those three choices, my own feeling is that taking stored assets, some combination of both, and I'm taking available funds even for OPEB, and I'm increasing it some probably makes sense, but I'd just be cautious, just the degree of, it's a matter of degree and not kind, of seriousness over time with time value of money and all the rest of it that.
Yeah, the choices. I appreciate that, and we should do that. I think we'd be interested in a lot of the goals that the selectmen and the town administrator have around issues like this. Like one area that he brought up too was using savings to pay for operations. We'd love to keep, we applaud that fact, or I guess I'll speak for myself because we actually haven't discussed it yet. But I applaud that we brought it more into the range that the bond rating agencies would like us to be for stored assets. So I feel like that's a positive step from my perspective. But I'd love to hear at some point, more of these goals around, what we're aiming for. So.
And most of it's for capital, not operations. I mean,
Okay.
primarily, and it's been that way for a decade.
Okay.
If you look at my budget and the way it's laid out, it says for capital and primarily capital, but this year, in an attempt to give tax relief, I
Yeah.
took some additional and put it in operations just to get us down to just below what would be the 10%, which is the high end. So we've got plenty of enough room there.
Yeah.
And again, competing interest and needs, you have to weigh those. And my feeling is, particularly, I think it's been voiced by the Finance Committee and others, we need tax relief. Well, this is the most direct and certain way of doing it where we have the ability to do it. It's not threatening any other source of the budget, and taxpayers benefit immediately.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
these are good points, and I'm sorry if I was just about to interrupt a little bit earlier. We hear your points, and I think they all should be addressed, but you as Finance Committee might want to set up some of the items that you think you'd like to talk to us about, and we can have these discussions where we don't have a joint board meeting
Sure.
where there are other members here.
Sure.
So these.
Get into the boring weeds. I get it.
Well, no, it's not boring, and it's not the weeds. They're important financial details.
Okay.
It's just that we're not gonna make any of the choices that the town administrator was talking about tonight.
Right.
There's a better time to discuss not making those choices, but at least exploring those choices.
And could I advocate for doing this over the longer term? I budget 12 months a year. I budget every day. We're now a couple of months away, I'm a month away from my budget, and we're at town meeting May 1st. I would argue there's nothing in what's just been brought up that, from my perspective, would convince me that it's a better and wiser choice to increase OPEB if I'm taking away from reducing the tax rate or the other things for this year. What I'd prefer to do is to get started on it so that by the budget season next year, we've been able to sit down, identify and define and reason through and do all of the due diligence that I don't think can be done in the next few weeks, and I don't think there's a need to. But if the Finance Committee felt that way and wanted to, you can make that advocacy at town meeting for this year. But
We simply wanted to hear, we haven't had that dialogue, so we wanted to hear the top level. We don't expect any decisions made tonight.
Could I add something? And I'm sure you appreciate the OPEB liability, despite what GASB, what the Government Accounting Standards Board may have said, which was a very unusual thing. The OPEB liability is something that is owed over like 30 years. And it doesn't make any sense to even try to include, let's call that a $6 million total liability, maybe. It doesn't make any sense to try to include that $6 million liability owed over 30 years into the budget for any 1 year. And I'm sure that's not what you're really advocating.
That's correct.
What you're probably advocating, and it's something that has to be kept in mind, is number one, can you afford your annual health insurance premiums? You're on a pay-as-you-go basis,
Yeah.
but you're confident that as you continue on a pay-as-you-go basis, those premiums are at a level you can afford. That's one question. And then the second one is the one you raised, about the credit rating agencies. How do they, what do they expect? We all get all bollocked up with what the credit rating agencies expect. I don't know the answer to that, and there are informal ways of finding out. So there are a separate meeting about that makes sense,
Okay.
but I'm sure you're not advocating. GASB did a very unusual thing. They basically said, take the balance of your mortgage and include it in your annual budget, your income and expense. Doesn't make any sense. And they did it just to highlight that there are these liabilities out there, which is fine. But not even GASB is advocating, I don't think, try to budget in any 1 year for those entire liabilities.
Yeah, we're not advocating that either. So we can take this up at a time. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, basically, I think I favor Bill's approach, do it over the next year, because whether we went from 50,000 into OPEB to 100, it isn't going to make that much of a difference this year. And if we're going to be going through an audit in the next year, then we'll know the numbers, that we have to deal with, as well as the fact that in the last couple of years, Standard & Poor's has raised our credit rating. Knowing full well what we've been putting away for OPEB liabilities, but they were more worried about, I believe, that we had a good savings account. So,
And just to add another comment to this, we communicate with Standard & Poor's, which is who we've had for years. Telephone calls where we're huddled up at the table, and that's how, when we got to the AAA rating just, 2 years ago now, I've been trying to get there for 15 years. And we continue to stay in touch with them through our financial advisor and ourselves, so that we've got a sense from them what they're looking for in OPEB and all of the rest. And until we've got the audit complete, we've got a number to work on, that's when we'll be discussing with them what their expectations are. And with all due respect, whether what my opinion is, or your opinion, or some others, there's some benchmark opinions that do matter. They'd be one of them, not the only one. But I would rely on those professionals when I come to make a recommendation myself on what we should be putting away each year and why. And if not figure A, then figure B and Y on that. But it's going to take just a few months, and I think we've got enough time to do that without trying to do something at this annual town meeting. But again, that's my opinion. Finance Committee can do and ask what it wants to at town meeting.
Thank you.
Jericho, do you agree that we should be looking at these items that you want to discuss as long-term, especially the the OPEB liability and how to deal with it?
Yes.
Rather than for this town meeting? Then, as your liaison, when you have some discussions, if I'm not there, or even if I'm there, why don't you put these into packets of items that you want to discuss, and we'll try to get you some time on we will get you some time on the agenda, so that all these issues can be fleshed out more fully, especially with the board being more informed about some of these questions, these financial questions we've been talking about. Does that sound right?
That sounds good.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to discuss, especially about this budget season?
No, I think Bill actually answered the one question I had about when he applies stored assets towards the operating budget, and it sounds like it's a rare event. He just did it this year.
No, it's not a rare event.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Annually,
Usually you apply it to capital, I think is what you said.
and it's capital this year, I've applied an additional amount. Generally, it's in the neighborhood of, again, you guys have been around a long time, you've seen it each year.
400,000.
I mean, it's 400 to 500,000 for capital, right? If you go back and look at my budgets, and I go through the same spiel every year. And this year, for two reasons, I increased it, and I sourced it to what, if you look at my budget report that I've handed out to you, the preliminary one, it'll show the numbers in there for operations to reduce the tax rate, and at the same time, bring down the total amount of our stored assets to just about, I'm applying this year's numbers, but free cash gets certified every year, so I used this year's total expenditures with this year's certification. Percentage would otherwise be a little off if you use what is shown here as possible next year's budget. But in any event, nudged it just below, push it the 10% level.
Which is the upper level,
Which is the upper limit of where they was. So I was saying, we've got enough stored assets. We don't need more. We needed some tax relief. And so I did what I normally did, and I bumped it some to bring it down to that level and apply it directly for the purpose of reducing the tax rate.
I think the taxpayers will thank you for it.
I'm sure they'll be relieved that there's at least a reduction of some amount on that number, and there will be, for sure. I hope larger than smaller.
Well, we think it's the right thing to do this year, and that's the most important thing. Anything else? Finance Committee. But I assure you that I'm your liaison. Talk to me. We can have these larger methodological questions and financial practice and counting issues raised at another meeting.
Sounds good. And thank you again for working on the budget, so to get it really tight. Appreciate it.
Do we have to hear from anyone else, Mr. Town Administrator?
No, those were the invitees, the esteemed groups, so that's the extent of the joint boards.
Could I ask a question? Is the Nashoba Regional School District going to submit an SOI to MSBA?
It has not yet been decided. A draft statement of interest with the Massachusetts School Building Authority has been requested from the superintendent. The usual deadline for submitting it is in the vicinity of
April 6th.
mid-March or
April
April.
6th this year.
So I can express my opinion. It's pretty likely that the school committee will request that it be submitted, but no decision has been made.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Thank you again for attending tonight, but also thank you for all the hard work that you're doing throughout the year as board or committee of this town. We appreciate it. Thank you. And Mr. Martin, if you'd like to step up.
Absolutely.
The next item on the agenda is the rethinking and revisions you've made to the Pompo Community Center use policy. We greatly appreciate your rethinking this and giving us some fresh thoughts. And why don't you share with us where you are at this point?
Very good. Thank you for having me. I just want to make sure that I generated a email to every board member earlier in the week. I just want to make sure everybody has a copy of this.
We thank you for doing it when you're shorthanded.
Yes. Okay, so everybody has a copy of this?
I didn't print it out, but I read it.
Okay. Don't you?
I have everything we
We
would
got
give
it.
you. Then some.
Okay, so basically, in that particular email, I wanted to highlight a couple of things. After I came to this board on the 23rd of January, I did hear quite a bit of feedback from residents in Stowe about some of the existing conditions that are occurring down at the community center in terms of the way rooms and the function room and activity rooms are being used, and I think I kind of highlighted it here, but I'll just touch on it, that basically the Council on Aging, Recreation Department hold a lot of events down there. They, over the time, they don't charge for the room for the participants. There are various ages that participate in exercise classes and knitting and all kinds of different things. They do charge a minimal charge sometimes if they have an instructor, but they are not charging for a room use, okay? Other comments that came in were, gee, you know, we're still residents, we paid, we supported the construction of the building at, you know, under $9 million. We pay annually for an operation budget, and that the feeling generally coming to me anyway from the residents was that, gee, you know, we'd like to have the same benefit that others have in the building without a charge for the rooms. So I took a look at actually what it costs to run the operation down there on a per room basis. And so I took the money that we spent to operate the building from November of 16 through November of 17, and everything included, this is electric, heat, insurance, our annual contracts and so forth, all combined is $105,000 to operate that building. That translates out to about $2.92 per cost per square foot per year across the whole building. Now, there's no way to really isolate the community center side or the fire station side or the unassigned space or whatever, but so I took the average. But translating that further down to the actual rooms that we're talking about with this policy, which is the function room and the activity rooms, you can see here that the function room at a 3,100 square foot building, it costs about $1 an hour in terms of what we have spent on that building over a year.
That's the big function room.
That's the big function room, 3,100 square feet. The other rooms obviously quite small, all are under $1, 21 cents for activity room 127, 122 is a 672 square foot room. It's about 22 cents an hour. The other room, a little smaller, is 11 cents an hour. In the kitchen, hard to put an exact number on that, but it translated out to about 14 cents an hour, and obviously that would change depending on the type of activity in there and the gas use and all that. But I wanted to get that type of information to the board. So moving on to, did you have any questions on that
I just
particular?
have one quick question.
Yep.
For some reason, how much is the total heat, electricity, and everything? Maybe I'm just not.
So isolating the electric
because-
cost and the heating and the air conditioning, it's about $40,000 a year.
Mhm. Yeah, because I'm looking, because are you talking about 24,000 square feet, including the fire station?
Including about, it's
About
a
10,000.
36,000 square foot building, so I'm actually doing the numbers based on 36,000 square feet.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't really have a way to, I don't know if you remember, we never really we never put a meter on every section of the building. We have what they call a running kilowatt meter, which would have to be logged down every single month in order to try to isolate just exactly what electricity is used in each part of the building. I actually haven't done that, so I don't have that number for you, but this is the overall cost.
Yeah, because what the thing that was jumping out at me was, I'll call it assuming, if we were talking about 10,000 square feet, $2.92 a square foot would say that the whole community center side is costing you less than 29 grand, or about 30 grand a year.
Where's the 10,000 come from?
The community center section is about 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, a little bit larger than that. I think it's close to 12,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you're saying all the heat, electricity, air conditioning, maintenance, everything is less than
Yep,
$30,000.
everything.
Insurance is less than $30,000 a year for just the community center side. It
Well,
just seems low.
we don't divide up the insurance. The insurance for the whole building is around $23,000 per year.
Yeah, I'm just taking some rough numbers because it just seemed kind of low.
Well, even if this is 5 times off, it's still,
No, I'm.
you know, I think you could be wrong by 10 times, and I think this is going like seriously into the weeds when
No,
you could really be
I
looking
just
at
want to
the
make
bigger
sure I'm
picture. Yeah.
starting off on the same.
It's important to know as
Same.
well that the 10,000 square feet, which was originally the undeveloped space, we still have utilities in there and the
Right.
heat and the, electricity and all the rest, so it's the full 36, or
Right,
32.
but I'm just saying that,
Portion.
$30,000 seems real cheap for a 10,000 square foot facility, including maintenance, supplies, et
Well,
cetera.
let's say,
Yeah.
just so that, because you're not gonna
I'm not gonna
determine
make-
that tonight.
Right.
Check the figures,
I'm just-
see if you've missed something or not,
Right.
and
I think it's almost irrelevant to,
I mean, I totaled, I went through, supplies, labor, insurance, heating and ventilating, our annual contracts for taking care of the HVAC system, the emergency generator. I tried to include all that in that total number. And I have all the printouts from
Yeah.
that, so, but I'd be
so
glad.
take another look.
Take another look
Yeah,
at it.
okay.
I'd be glad to do that.
Let's assume for discussion purpose tonight that those numbers are reasonably accurate or
Yeah.
off by less than an order of magnitude.
significant order of magnitude.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the policy for a second here. Administratively, I only made a few upgrades to this. In item number 3 on the first page, I expanded the issue about what it takes to rent the kitchen. The insurance required, the serve safe, the permitting through the Board of Health, and that actually there is no charge for the town from the Board of Health or nonprofit group activities. However, other groups would have a $20 fee associated with that. I did integrate a no smoking policy into this, but thinking about it a little further, I think we could certainly amend this to include an area on the site where people could smoke and without really affecting the activity on the site. So I could certainly amend that. I did also eliminate Sunday activity and observe holidays, because I don't have a custodian for Sundays. I think most all our buildings are closed on Sundays. The only real exception is the town hall where we have the AA in there, and that's been a long-term thing. To have the building open on a holiday or Sunday, in any event, that's what I have plugged in here to do that. On page 2, there was a comment from a resident about our method of obtaining a key to get into the building, and we, to start off, we said, okay, we've got keys, we'll leave them at the police station, you go down and pick it up, take it to the building, return it after the event. We thought about it a lot more. We're gonna change out the front door. It will still have a key, but it'll be a push code for the front door. So an applicant that has permission to go in the building, they will get the code. They can go to the building, they can punch in the front door code, get in. They can go inside, set the timer so that the handicap accessibility is operational, and then they can go ahead with their event. And in the end of the night, they close up the building and they're gone. They don't have to take the key back or any of that.
How often is the code gonna change?
It's up to us. We can do it monthly, we can do it every 2 months, we can do it weekly. It has that variability, so.
Once somebody's got the code, they can come in anytime they want, until you change it.
We could change it quite often. I mean, we have that ability.
Will that be inconvenient for employees? Will they be using the same code?
They would. Once we set a code on it, it would be the employees. But the employees have keys, so they can, or either way, it would be one code.
Is it a programmable, remotely programmable?
Not remotely, as far as I know. There may be a product that has remote changes, but most of them, I think we'd have to go there and actually change it.
No, all I was thinking of is if you had a standard code for employees and regular people, and then you gave other people a code that would be good for one day.
That's very possible. The way things are now with technology,
Yeah. It was just a
real
thought.
approach. And I have to tell you, I have not researched it to that level. I just took that comment that came in from one of the residents, and they said, that makes it a lot easier.
That, if I'm not mistaken, was resident Chris Spear, who gave a very thoughtful,
Yes.
he gave us a thoughtful email about a number of issues, and we're grateful to him, even though he's not here tonight.
Yeah.
What about his idea just to, and I don't know if you checked this out with the fire department, just have the key at the fire department?
There may not be anybody at the fire department.
We've talked
at
about
certain
that,
times.
Mr. Chairman. They are, even though there are firemen in the building on a regular basis, if they are out on a call, which they are on quite frequently, you go in their door and there is no one there.
Gotcha.
So that's the only impediment that we have, really. If we had somebody there full-time, I would say absolutely, but.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a recommendation that we not dictate this level of detail to the building department. I think we should be looking at the bigger issues and how our residents use this and trust that.
I think we're just making
It's just-
a couple suggestions.
One at a time.
Too many in my opinion, but go ahead, that's all.
Well, the question is whether the policy itself ought to be granular to that level, I think is what she's saying.
Well, this, yes, because this is what the person renting the room would sign. And so they need to have that level, unless maybe we're saying that. But I personally don't think the Board of Selectmen needs to micro-edit this. I think you get what you have to manage, and you've done your research on this.
I could certainly provide the board with some responses to these comments, through email if that's sufficient, or.
I actually agree with Ingeborg on that you probably don't. I was making it as a friendly suggestion.
Yep.
Jim brought up one thing, because I actually have a problem with, you give somebody the key code, and it's good for a month, and he can wander in and out at will. I think that was Jim's issue, and, you know,
I would say at the level of technology today, that we have probably quite a few different ways to program in a push-button system. So I will do.
I think we've expressed our concern. We want security, but we don't want employees to have a different code to access the building every day.
All right, to Ingeborg's,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sully. To
Sorry.
Ingeborg's point, I know that you mentioned here about the key code in the room reservation form. What I would think from hearing my colleagues, that's something that part of this is a work under progress, and you can let us know what you eventually decide on that. But when we approve this room rental policy, we're not going to be demanding that number 11 be final. Is that fair?
That's fair.
That's
Yes.
it? Mr. Hawkins?
I'm quite concerned about what I gather, since I don't think the board has been involved in a decision on this. I'm referring to number 8 in particular. I don't think we have ever expressed our position that 1/7 of the year should be off limits for any particular group. And in particular, the one that was mentioned as the regular long-term group there. AA has been there for, either there or in one of the schools for 30, 40 years. And I think it would also affect some other rates, functions that perhaps a resident might want to have a wedding reception there on a Sunday or something. I am not in favor of eliminating Sundays in a blanket form, regardless of which group maybe it might apply to. And I would think if it requires special attention to make sure that the building is cleaned up because you don't have a custodian that day, that we should bend over backwards to try to do that.
That is the primary reason. We don't have custodial service.
Okay, how about, for instance, for the one recurring use, if they were to provide a bond, in effect, or a fund of X $100, and if they don't keep the place clean when they leave there, and you have to hire somebody to come in, it's paid out of that. I think that would provide significant incentive for that group to make sure it's clean, because they don't have that kind of money.
well, I think there may be other issues too, though, Don. That some of the functions, especially if you're talking about, let's say, a wedding, that would probably, based on my conversations with Craig, would probably mandate that there be a custodian there. You're gonna have to have somebody to make sure, you know, Craig doesn't want to be getting phone calls on a Sunday afternoon to reset breakers, change toilet paper, this, that, or the other thing, so that if they had a function with 100 people there, he would probably at this point be mandating that there be a custodian, just to make sure that things like that don't
Okay, let me be
make
more
it go
specific.
bad.
One at a
I
time,
would
one
put-
at a time, one at a time. So Ryan had a point. Do you want to address that point right now, or do you want to hear from Mr. Hawks?
I'm certainly willing to listen to Dawn.
Well, I would make it even then more specific to that one group, that give them a chance to prove they can keep the place clean with the kind of a system that I just suggested. Give them that option. I don't think it's a program that is recognized around the world for its value. And I'm sure there's any number of Stowe residents, yes, there are out-of-town people too, who take advantage of it. And I would not want to see them disenfranchised or thrown out of Stowe because of this policy. So I will not vote for this if that is part of this, if that is part of this policy.
Okay.
So they're still
They're
able
in
to
the town
continue
hall.
to use the town hall,
They use the
right?
town hall on a regular basis.
They're not being totally
But
stowed, right?
isn't there significant effort in the long run, as I've heard the town administrator mention before, that place is a heat dump, everything else, we ought to get away from using it year-round.
well, we continue to heat it year-round because you can't close it down, so we are reducing its use, but we weren't gonna abandon the building, because I think longer term, there is the hope that we're gonna make more productive use out of the building, but different from having office space because of the conditions of the building.
Can you
Look,
guarantee that that group will continue to be able to move
I
over there?
I can't guarantee anything, and I think if you're looking for guarantees, Don, you're asking for too much. We can't guarantee anything about much of it. They've been here a long time, there's no, I'm not aware of any effort to tell them they've gotta leave the town hall. I think the distinction with the difference was whether they would go down the street or not, and that's really, I would make that argument if you wish to, but I mean, I don't think there's anybody thinking at all about
Okay,
dislocating.
then that's my argument, that they should not be foreclosed from that option.
Craig, based on our conversation, you said that you had not, at this point, you had not planned on moving the AA group down there, right? They were gonna continue status quo, correct?
That's correct.
Right, this is a very important group, and I hear both sides on this. While we can't guarantee that the town hall will always be open, what we can guarantee is that if the town hall is ever close to this very important civic group, that there would be, it wouldn't be done without you coming before us and saying that we have to rethink this no Sunday policy for the community center. And that's a guarantee you can make.
Yes, I can.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Sully?
If you have to send a custodian there or anybody else there on Sunday, do you have to pay double overtime? I don't know the wage and hour laws.
I would. Yes, his hours right now are Monday through Saturday.
He would be, we would have to pay him overtime,
Yeah,
and we wouldn't have to pay double.
not double.
So there's a bit of a sliding scale here for me. I mean, to the extent that we're saying that certain civic organizations should be not charged or charge only a nominal fee, I agree with that. We have to reduce at least a few costs. And if you're gonna have free events on Sundays, you're not gonna wanna pay double overtime for your custodial staff, or overtime for your custodial staff.
Just as a practical question, can the AA meet on something other than Sunday? Or is that a,
I think they try to make sure that any area is covered 7 days a week, so that might not work out for them, I don't know.
The name of the group is Stowe Sunday Morning, and it's been that way for probably 40-some years.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I
Ms.
think,
Clark, you're gonna make another practical suggestion?
yes, I am. On the Table A rate schedule, you have an asterisk that says, depending on the type of event, you have a custodian fee that may be $20 an hour. You could have a similar asterisk with respect to items 1, 2, or 3 that are otherwise no charge, that would have.
And I was going to do that,
Okay,
actually.
and-
Actually, it's a very good point.
Right, so you
Yeah.
could have a, right.
Yep.
And then on your list, your rates, rules, and regulations, you could just say the building is typically closed on Sundays and holidays. If you want a Sunday event, you have to have some additional review. I don't know, you find a word for that. But
Yep.
once again, it's, all of this is just, the comments are great, but I don't think we have to solve them all tonight. Because there are other comments that that I've heard and that people are waiting to make.
Yes, and I think that we have, I think you've encapsulated it very well, Ms. Clark. I think we're gonna move forward on this with the understanding that this is not gonna be, although we might pass it tonight, it's not set in stone.
Correct.
And
It can always be revisited, yep.
circumstances
Yeah.
come up
Yep.
that maybe you can deal with on your own on a maybe one-off basis, but if it requires a considered and considerable change of the policy,
And I would come back.
you
to
come
it.
back before us. Does that satisfy my colleagues?
Can I make one comment on there?
Sure.
It's actually a distinction that Chief Landry has made before. Regulations need to be followed. I think we could change it to guidelines, which would then allow our building inspector a certain latitude, because they are guidelines versus regulations that we have voted on.
One at a time. I take it you agree? My other colleagues, what do they think?
So, I think that's fine. May I make another comment?
Sure.
I missed the meeting in which this was first discussed, but I have.
It's on tape.
Well, I read the minutes. I did not invest that kind of time. I only had one thing, and I shared this with Craig informally. On the charges, I understand what you're trying to do, and I agree with it, trying to make, let's say, Stowe-centered nonprofits or other charities for no charge. That makes a lot of sense. I just urge a lot of caution about how to try to define Stowe-centered. It's been a problem in the past. You've got here majority of Stowe residents. You're not always going to be able to determine that. You know, something like Rotary or AA, you're not going to know. I don't have the answer to that. Maybe something Stowe-centered or regionally centered that would get the Rotary.
I've actually, just to interrupt for 1 second,
Sure,
I've
please.
actually struck that, majority of Stowe residents, and inserted, at least preliminarily, that a other group classified as a 501c3 that serves the town of Stowe and the town residents, which might cover that particular issue.
Do you have another table A that we haven't?
No, I mean, it's the same table, it's just, I had looked at that and just kind of plugged that in. That particular.
That's why they're guidelines.
I personally like that.
One at
I
a time, one at a time.
I might suggest adding regional, so you get something like Rotary. I think we all agree that if somebody wants to let, Doctors Without Borders, they're terrific, but they're not Stowe-centered. They wouldn't get that kind of a break. I think that sounds good. I just suggest adding regional to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I also thought, going to item 3, that would also be a sentence that I could integrate into there in terms of Stowe resident group activities as nonprofits without a 501c3 classification, also that serves the town and the town residents. And we could put in the regional as well.
I have a comment on that.
Yes.
I was wondering if a personal event should pay, like if I was gonna throw a retirement party or something. I mean, if I went to any other hall, I'd have to pay for that. Was there a reason that you did that?
On the personal level?
Yeah.
Only from the perspective, as I described in my memo, that Stowe residents
Paying by tax.
have paid,
Right.
at least they pay for construction, they pay the annual operation and maintenance. The one thing that, if the board feels this is significant, what we could do is, and we are doing it now, is we ask for a deposit, which is refundable, as a bit of a protection for the town for any kind of damage if anything happens. We do have them sign an indemnification form. We do ask for insurance. The application, we have all the information. We could add under those 3 categories that we would be asking for a deposit that would be refundable. If they leave the place spick and span, and everything is fine, they get their money right back. So,
I shared Ingeborg's concern, the same one. It seems very generous. I think I might be satisfied if we just agreed to let this go for a year, and in a year get a report about who's renting for no charge. And if we see a lot of personal weddings and retirement parties, maybe we gotta do something about that. If my wife throws me a birthday party, as unlikely as that may be, I don't think we expect our taxes to cover the rental of the hall, but I don't know.
okay.
All right, we've got a couple of, do you have a point to be made on that?
Exactly the same point. I
Okay.
think that it should be something nominal, call it in the neighborhood of $100, and at least a $250 security deposit that is refundable, but something in the neighborhood, the numbers I drafted down was $100 for the large hall, $150 if you do it with the kitchen, and $75 for just the kitchen by itself, but with like a 4-hour limit on it. That's all. Something nominal, and then if a custodian was required because it was going to be a 150-person event, you know, it comes out a couple $100, which is what you pay at any other hall in the area. I know one place I can rent as a member, it's $200 for 4 hours.
Come to Orange. We'll get it for you.
I just want to say,
Belong to several clubs.
The
We'll take
friendly
care of you.
town.
I just want to say, Mr. Ryan has a different idea of nominal than I do.
I know it.
He's throwing $100 around.
Come on.
Okay, I'm gonna put an end to this, or not an end to it, but I'm gonna put a cessation to it for the time being. It seems like we've got a process issue, which is, do we have enough concrete before us in order to make a decision tonight? Or do we need to see this table and maybe this policy another time? And I'll ask my colleagues for their input on that. And then I'll ask for input from the town.
I won't vote in favor of this with the fee structure the way it is. I'm okay with the, with the tier, I'll call it group 1, group 2, I could buy that to check it out for a year. I think group 3 is probably what I just mentioned, as well as actually the group 2s, I think, should probably be putting down a security deposit that is fully refundable, but not, you know, I would let that go for free for the first year and see where it went. And then probably a little, I'd be okay with the group 5.
So I think the answer is no.
No.
The answer is no. Okay, so
The answer is no.
okay, we need to see another table. Is that what I'm getting from people? And another policy with some of these thoughts?
Not for me. I mean, I'm just going to say, I think Craig's got it close enough. We've made some suggestions. I think he can run with them. I would like to see it go into effect, and then in 6 months, a year, see how it's working out, get a list of who's been renting at no charge, see if we think that that's about right.
How's that for a suggestion?
I would, if that had been a motion, I would have seconded it.
And if-
I'm not calling for motions
No,
just
I
yet.
know.
No,
I'm
but
just
you're getting a
saying I would
sense of the
agree with
board.
it.
Yes.
And if I hear the word guidelines instead of regulations, I might be set with that too.
Okay. But the only reason I wanted to stop that is I did want to get public input, but before I do, the chair has one question. This thing in 8 about no political events are allowed, does that include
I would-
meetings of the, well, let me finish, meetings of the Democratic and Republican town committees?
No, they are allowed. I'm saying.
Thank you.
If Mr. Trump came to the town and wanted to hold a political rally there, we wouldn't do it.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Because it's Mr. Trump or
Let's, I thought you wanted to keep on business.
You set us up for that one.
I don't think so, but.
What if it was
This is a good time to hear from public input, citizen input. Is there, yes, are there any citizens there?
Gary Burnflow, Hudson Road. I really appreciate revisiting these requirements from last time. It sounds like a perfect fit for us. I do, as far as the Boy Scouts go and the Cub Scouts and Buchholz, which I'm here representing, I would say that not having it available on Sundays, at least every Sunday, might be an issue. There might be a couple of Sundays a year where we would like to be able to use it.
Previous courts of law?
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but we have had Sunday events in the past, and it would be nice if that were an option, maybe one Sunday a year to plan something well in advance, if we made arrangements with the town. So I would throw my voice behind making that at least an option with permission from the town at some point. You know, typically, if it's closed on Sunday, fine, but there may be some instance where we would like to use it on a Sunday. But certainly not every Sunday and not, throughout the year. So I'm very pleased by that. I'm really in favor of putting on a security deposit for any event you have. It's really important to make sure that the folks that are using this are taking care of it, because it is a community center. It's meant for everybody. So a security deposit I don't have a problem with. And that's really all I wanted to say. I think you guys did a great job, and I really appreciate it, Craig, for coming back with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen input?
Gail Summer from High Street in Stowe, and Susan Holmes from Kirkland Drive.
Yes, yes.
Stowe Women's
So yes, we remember you. Thank you.
So yeah, we appreciate the no charge for the local civic nonprofit organization. We're fine with paying the security deposit. We pretty much make things cleaner than when we find them usually when we go in. This Sunday, I think we were just discussing, we might be open to occasional, we had a Sunday meeting there actually this fall. So the Sundays, I guess we'd like to have as an option, if that's possible.
And not, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I apologize. I'm calling for public input, and I thought you might have been concluded, so forgive me.
Well, I'm not sure we want to go into it in detail at this specific point in time, but maybe I can talk to Mr. Martin offline.
Absolutely.
The Stowe Women's Club is not technically, not at all, a 501c3 or a 501c7. However, we have to file all the forms that a 501c3 files because we have fundraisers, the proceeds of which are destined for charitable organizations. Our Breakfast with Santa every year, we raise a few $1,000s and then we in turn disperse those monies to Warm Hearts of Stowe, to the Stowe Food Pantry. In the past, we have given to the Council on Aging and so forth. We do a scholarship at Nashoba High School. So the monies are destined for charitable purposes, thus we have to file the forms as a charitable organization. So we're a little bit betwixt and between. But I didn't want to misrepresent our status.
No, thank you. No, you're not misrepresenting anything. That was just what the building inspector put down. I'll ask Mr. Martin, can we just get rid of the number and just have a 501c?
Well, he's got a catch-all, category 3.
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-all nonprofit.
I know, but Stowe Women's is listed specifically in 2.
Well, we have 3.
Just get rid of 501, the 3 and the 7, just a 501c. Anything else?
Thank you very much for reconsidering.
Well, no, this is why we make these decisions in public. This is why we have input. Yeah, I got it. Mr. Byron.
William Byron, Bleasondale Road. The only concern I have about the use of the building has nothing to do with fees, but anything that takes place in the evening or on a weekend day, when there's not normally someone that is a representative of the town in the building, I'm concerned about things happening. If the lights go out, if the water goes off, if the gas goes out, or a light falls from the ceiling, unforeseen things that may happen. I personally think that one way or another, a responsible person from the town should be in the building.
To that point, we're very fortunate in that our building inspector and our assistant building inspector both reside in Stowe or nearby. At least, I forget where Doug is now, but they're right here. They're almost a 24/7 outfit. Maybe I shouldn't have answered for you. Do you want to?
No, we are.
They're a 24/7 outfit, and even on those occasions when they have vacations, they've worked out an informal agreement with building inspectors in the neighboring communities so that they can't have people on site. I hear your point, Mr. Byron, but I think that as long as anyone who's using the building on a weekend knows that they should call the building inspector if, let's say, the roof falls in, God forbid, I think we're covered.
I think most people would dial 911.
And they
Fire stations.
Just run over to the fire station.
Knock on the neighbor's door.
If they're not on a call.
All I'm trying to
Mr.
say
Ryan.
is I'm trying to keep them.
We're trying to get to this, Mr. Ryan.
Call the
Right.
building inspector any more than necessary.
Well, and that's exactly one of my points, is that right now we do have, I agree with Bill, that I'm concerned that this thing will end up growing. Craig is, out of the goodness of his heart, willing to go up and change a couple rolls of toilet paper on a Sunday afternoon, but he shouldn't have to do that. Therefore, on certain things, I think some of the Boy Scout groups, the Girl Scout groups, the ones that would be in there on a regular basis, I don't have as big a problem because they're very Stowe-based, and I think, Gary would change a roll of toilet paper. But if we end up having if we ended up having to have functions with a lot of people, I think that Craig shouldn't be on call on a Sunday afternoon, and that we may have to make other arrangements for that. And I just want, my main concern is that we will end up spending a lot more money on this than we thought and not cover the costs, that's all.
I only observe there's a big difference between the lights going off the roof caving in and changing a toilet roll pail.
But Craig has been called up to change toilet paper before.
Yeah, maybe even earlier, but if you've got concerns along those lines, Mr. Ryan, I just respectfully suggest you start trying to frame them in the format of a motion. But before we take any motions, our Madam Clerk has a point she'd like to make.
Linda Hathaway, 76 Crescent Street. And I just wanted to say that I would like to see that the personal parties and stove stuff have a fee to it, a minimal fee, a nominal fee. I'm speaking as a taxpayer, and I would expect to pay something for use of that building. Granted, taxes paid for it, and we have operating costs, but Stowe Community Park and some other fields have a nominal fee for residents to use. Having some kind of standardized thing across the town for all the buildings would be probably helpful. And also, too, that function room is competing against other places that already charge fees, our churches and other businesses that have room fees or whatever where these parties go. So I would expect to pay a fee. And if I do choose, I might make a donation, even if a fee isn't charged. The other thing is, I do agree with Bill Byron about having someone in the building do the custodial stuff. Just, to be able to get and unlock things, but you might only have so much toilet paper available and accessible, but you might need other things that are behind locked doors that you can't get to. And then the other comment is, and I thought of it as I was thinking about it, is if the kitchen is in use, I would highly recommend that any of the cabinets that store stuff that belong to COA or the wheel site or anything else have locks on them, because things will lock.
They do.
Guaranteed. Not just the doors, but the cabinets.
Any other public input on this question? Well then, I go back to my colleagues. Do we have enough that you can frame a motion that covers all the points, or as many of the points as you feel are necessary for this building use? Or would you like our building inspector to give one more shot at this so that we have a nice, clean copy on which to vote at one of our upcoming meetings? Even though I think we've gotten 85% of the way to a final guideline and rate chart. If I don't hear anything, I'll have to make the decision myself.
Well,
No one does, that's why I'm threatening it.
I could make a motion, but I don't think anybody would support it because I would be changing a lot of the things. So, and I'm just gonna give that to Craig. That's, just so you know, I don't know if you knew about the the charges that they have for just the recreation fields and pavilions and stuff. That's from the, the recreation department charges $20 for one of the pavilions down at, $20 an hour for one of the pavilions down at Pine Bluffs, with a 2-hour minimum.
For what kind of groups?
Over 8.
All right, let me ask my question another way. Mr. Martin, you've heard a lot, and I appreciate that you've come back on this subject, but it is a subject and it is a topic of great public interest and a lot of public comment, more than I've seen probably in my tenure as chair. So, would you prefer to come back with us, having absorbed some of the new comments you've received tonight, and maybe lay something out again? Or
You want the real answer on that? No, I would, whatever the board's wishes are, I would do that. I would like to move this forward so
Fair enough.
we can get this in place, because we
So,
are getting calls for, you know, for applicants for the building, and we are doing all the scheduling out of our office. And people are asking questions about what is the fee, and how you doing this, and how you doing that. And we're coming into the spring, and it is getting busy. So, I am anxious to, I'll absorb, I think, everything that, all the comments that have been made.
Do you think 2 weeks is enough? Or 2 weeks is too long, I mean?
We're almost there, so if you'd like me to come back in 2 weeks, I will, work on this and.
I will give you a guarantee, if you come back in 2 weeks, you'll get a decision from this board.
I'll shake on that.
Fair enough?
Yeah, 10 minutes ago, I thought there were few enough comments that we could just let it go. I think there's so many now, I'm more comfortable with it.
But we're really close, really close. I think we are too. And I think Craig's done a fine job on it.
And this backup has been very,
Thank you very much.
very helpful. You're welcome. I'm not gonna take any more public comments on this, we spent enough time, we'll take public comments briefly in 2 weeks. The one thing I would ask you is, we're about to approve a liquor license for an event that's gonna take place on Wednesday night, March 7th. And I don't know, at the Stowe Community Center, if I'm not mistaken, and doesn't that conflict with one of your Boy Scout meetings?
That's the Wednesday night it would, yeah.
So why don't you guys talk
We're not
about
quite booked in there yet, as far as I'm.
Why don't you guys talk about that on your way out the door, if you don't mind?
Yep, yeah,
But we're about to approve a license.
I know.
And I don't know how many of your Boy Scouts drank.
Neither do I, which is probably
It's not required for the Eagles. so-
We know how much the troop masters drank. That's something else. Thank you all who came.
Can they help with this?
I'm sorry for moving this along a little quickly, but we do have a heavy schedule, and we have an executive session tonight. So I'm going to turn the meeting back over to the town administrator to discuss and present a vote on deficit spending for the snow and ice equipment.
And a recurring request, you all know the message.
You know the drill, okay.
Mr. Chairman, would like a motion.
Is there anything you'd like to add? Is there any reason why we're doing it? I mean, it's an annual request. Do we do it every year, or do we have to do it?
In my 26 years, you've never received this, so I don't.
I'm not saying we're
Are
never
we in a
do it.
deficit situation now?
Yeah.
We're $6 grand away, you wanna wait? That's when I bring it to you generally, so I'm close, I don't do it months in advance.
I just wanted some idea of where we were.
I'm close.
I think it might have been 1 year in the past 10 years we didn't deficit spend.
Well, I'll take that motion now, Mr. Salvi.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D, I move to allow deficit spending of fiscal year 21-18 snow and ice account.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to the vote to sign a certificate for Eagle Scout Mac Buchholz. I think you have that material in your package. I thank our administrative assistant for preparing that. And the only thing I would mention to the colleagues here, with their permission, I'd like to flesh out the cover letter a little bit to talk about this particular Eagle Scout candidates, Eagle Scout project, if you'll allow me that latitude.
I think that's a great idea.
You know, there are 3 that are coming up, and I know, I can't remember if,
Oh, I see, you're just saying to make, yes.
yeah, I think it was a,
To authorize the chairman to
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't remember if it's a picnic bench at Lake Boone or, but I'm sorry, forgive me, I have 3 in my head and they're kind of
That's
jumbled.
okay, I was just curious.
But I think it'll be presented, you'll get a copy, I guess, of the final letter, and also I think you'll see a picture of it at town meeting.
Are you going to the Court of Honor?
And you will be there to make the presentation?
Thank you, yes, I will be there, I have to do that.
So, I don't think I need to include anything about authorizing to embellish.
But I did want to do so without checking with you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recognize Boy Scout Max Buchholz for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout and to sign and authorize Board Member Brian Burke to present the letter of proclamation of ATMAX's recognition ceremony on Saturday, March 10th, 2018.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you to my colleagues, and thank you for giving me the latitude. Now, we have the modifications to the special liquor license for the Nashoba Regional High School after prom committee fundraiser. I think you'll remember these applicants were before the board at our last meeting, and there was, the only question that was left was as to the exact date. They come up with March 7th, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the only question then is, and I think based upon our discussions last time, we just needed a date and we were going to vote to amend it or to reissue it and sign it. Is that correct?
Correct. According to the minutes we already have.
You are trustee clerk. Thank you. Then all those in favor of the...
You need a motion.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to modify the previously approved special one-day liquor license for the Nashoba Regional High School after prom committee fundraising event at the Pompo Community Center and sign the new special one-day liquor license approving the event for Wednesday, March 7th, 2018 from 6:30 and 9:30 p.m. with Julie Fish and Maureen Hogan being responsible for the event and liquor distribution.
Second.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Salvi. Any discussion or further comment? All right. And we also thank the applicants for working with us to get this thing finalized and set. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Again, I believe that is unanimous. Now, we come now to the Selectmen's submission to the annual report. Maureen, did we get any comments or edits or amendments?
I've not seen anything.
Because you did ask for them to be by Monday. But not to be draconian, is there any last-minute thoughts before we put this important document into the historical records of the town?
Fine job.
I see anything? Then we will take a vote on the draft of the Board of Selectmen 2017 annual report as included in the packet. Yes, thank you, Mr. Austin.
Chairman, I move to approve the 2017 annual report for the Board of Selectmen as drafted for inclusion in the 2017 Town of Stowe report.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. And I want to thank our administrative assistant for her helping actually drafting most of it, if not almost all of it. Now, that brings us, because we had a joint board meeting, I asked the town, our administrative assistant to move meetings and correspondence to the back so that we wouldn't be delaying our valuable volunteer board and committee members. Has everyone got their minutes in front of them? I think the minutes we have in this session are for February 13th. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of February 13th, 2018 as drafted.
Second.
All right, any amendments? Any suggestions? The only one I had was the minutes, and I guess they don't really have to, don't reflect that we had late visitors last meeting, but we don't have their names, and it's my fault for not getting their names and addresses. But again, they didn't come in on any agenda item. We kind of just gave them some advice and sent them on their way, just like the Stowe Board of Selectmen did in the old days before the town administrator.
I thought they did come for an agenda item.
They did, but they didn't come at the time of the agenda item.
The Walcott Street thing, right?
It was, yes,
They were
poll.
wanted to understand the poll on private property.
And you gave them very good advice.
Right, right.
You could have been a selectman 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
He wasn't old enough to vote.
this is the only
I wish that was true.
You still got it.
Maybe that should be in the record.
Yeah, right.
But, you know,